There we go. There we go. We'll give it one more minute for anyone else to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hope everyone had a good New Year's. Nothing too crazy.
Hopefully not. Or hopefully everyone's recovered by now.
Yes. Well, it's 11:01. Let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are going to be talking about 1099s and what on earth is a 1099. I'm sure it's a number that many of you have heard, but what exactly is it? We'll be going over that today. My name is Erin Vukolich. I'm the Director of Accounting at Prefix Accounting, and this is Sarah. I always say her last name wrong, so I'll let you. And she is the COO of Prefix Accounting. Normally, you guys would be seeing Chris Maxey, but we took over this one. So just a note that the webinar today is being recorded. It'll be posted on YouTube a little bit after this with the slides. We are Prefix Accounting. We do accounting work, bookkeeping, payroll, advisory, specifically for the hospitality industry, helping people understand their business and their restaurants and handling the day-to-day accounting. Today's webinar is going to be for operators, not necessarily for CPAs. It's more of an intro class to 1099s and what is all involved in that whole process. So CPAs most likely know all of this. They're most likely the ones that are asking for the 1099s. They don't necessarily need to be here attending this class today. Also, this is not legal or tax advice. It's a disclaimer on all of our webinars. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Additional webinars and housekeeping. We do have 3 more upcoming webinars throughout February and I believe April. One is strategies for lowering labor costs, accounting on a budget, and costing a menu. There is a little register here link in the slide deck. Like I said, this will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube later in the week. And if you want to see more of these, definitely subscribe to our newsletter so you can keep up on our content. I have a quick overview here. First, we're going to talk about the types of 1099s. Then we'll go into the nitty-gritty with reviewing the vendors, a potential suspect accounts on your profit and loss, what you need to do once you've identified those vendors that need to receive a 1099. We'll talk about reviewing all of the detail, making sure you have everything. Then the actual filing of the forms and due dates. Different states have different regulations, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about how to set yourself up for success in 2023 and how you can make the whole 1099 process a little less painful at the end of the year. So first of all, types of 1099s. The most commonly used forms are your 1099 NEC, your 1099 miscellaneous, and your 1099K. The NEC is for non-employee compensation, basically any payments for services rendered to individuals or partnerships, LLCs, anything like that. Your 1099 miscellaneous typically is issued for to businesses or individuals that you're paying rent to or other income. You can have some types of healthcare and legal payments reported on those, but you don't usually see those in the day-to-day. Rent and other income are definitely the more frequently seen on the 1099 miscellaneous. And then you have the 1099K, which is issued by any merchant processor. You have a credit card machine, you're going to get a 1099K showing your gross receipts that were run through the credit card machine. Or if you accept payments online through a website like Shopify or PayPal, usually you'd have a merchant processor associated with that. You're going to get a 1099-K from them. There are some other forms that you may or may not be familiar with. I think the ones that are a little more familiar are like the 1099-B, which is a brokerage statement. If you have any investments, anything like that. 1099 dividends, 1099 interest statements. 1099-G is usually unemployment payments. So there are a lot of forms. We're really only going to focus on the NEC and the 1099 miscellaneous, because those are the ones that most businesses will need to file. Just a note going forward, we will be showing some screenshots of QuickBooks Online, as that's what we use. We'll go over the 1099 wizard in QuickBooks Online. We are using, just for clarity, we are using Intuit's little test drive QuickBooks Online file. If you don't know about that, it's pretty cool, and you use QuickBooks Online. It's this demo file they have. So that's where all of our screenshots are coming from. And we will go ahead and get started. Sarah, take it.
Thanks, Erin. So like as Erin was saying, we're going to be talking about the 1099 NEC and the 1099 miscellaneous. The one that's going to be the most in-depth is going to be the 1099 NEC, because that's all of your non-employee compensation folks. So who qualifies for the 1099s is anyone with non-employment income of $600 or more. So that means even if you wrote them one check for $600 one time during the year, you need to send them a 1099. This also includes attorneys and any individuals and businesses that are not incorporated. So if you call up Joe's Snowplow Inc., they're going to say, oh, we're incorporated and you don't need to issue us a 1099, which is correct. The typical accounts that you're going to look for, the expenses that qualify as a 1099able expense, are going to be your professional services. So you have somebody come in to do some consulting, that's 1099able. You have your lawyer fees, your bookkeepers, and then repairs and maintenance. So this is not the products that you're purchasing for repairs and maintenance. This is only the labor. So you'll want to make sure you have it broken down between labor and like reimbursed expenses of products bought for the repairs and maintenance. Any commissions paid that were not paid in payroll. Hopefully, if you've paid anybody commission that is on payroll, you've run that through your payroll, as that is the correct way to go about that one. But there are other types of booking commission engines where you would need to provide them with a 1099. Music and entertainment. So are you having bands come in? Are you having comedy shows, things like that, where the payments to the host of the show, so whoever the comedian is or the musical group, you're going to issue them a 1099. Your advertising and marketing, this isn't going to be like Facebook or those types of marketing, but if you have like a marketing consultant, they would definitely need a 1099. Another place that a lot of people forget to look are in the improvements, typically because that's on the balance sheet. So if you've done a lot of leasehold improvements and you've made some larger investments into your property, and a big chunk of that is labor, you're going to want to capture that on a 1099. And then, of course, rent for the 1099 miscellaneous. Fortunately, they've made it slightly easy with the type of payments. I guess maybe it's not that easy because it's not all of the payments that you're making. It's just check and ACH payments. So if you've paid somebody with your credit card or with your debit card or through PayPal or anything like that, then you don't need to include those payments on your 1099s to folks. So if you make all of your payments to all of your vendors via your credit card, you wouldn't have to do any 1099s. But that's not the case for most people. There's typically checks written, bank transfers and things like that. So you'll want to make sure you have those separated out. Ooh, so we're going to look at a couple of the reports to use that are going to be pretty helpful in preparing yourself and your QuickBooks for filing these 1099s. So the first that we're going to look at is the expenses by vendor summary. So you are going to run this for a date range of last year, and it's going to show you all of the vendors and the total of the payments that you've made to each of those vendors. The review of this report is going to help you identify which vendors you need to investigate to decide if they have met those 1099 thresholds. So remember that you're looking for payments over $600 to individuals or businesses that have provided you with services. The next report that you're going to look at is the 1099 transaction detail report. Again, you're going to have the date ranges last year. One thing I just forgot to mention was that your accounting method, the reporting method that you should be using is cash. So all 1099s are only inclusive of payments that you've actually sent out and have actually been withdrawn from your bank account. So we're looking at cash basis. And so if you've received a bill, so if the insurance agency sent you a bill and you haven't paid that bill, then that amount is not going to be on the 1099. But this 1099 transaction detail report is going to be helpful once you've mapped out all of your 1099 accounts through the 1099 wizard in QBO, which we'll go over how to do that briefly. So once you have that listed out, you'll see here we have the vendor, and it tells you the transaction that is going to be included in the 1099. It shows that they are 1099able and that you do have their tax ID already. So you just want to make sure that that amount makes sense. Meaning, like, if this was to your contractor, was that payment inclusive of materials? And if it was, then you want to get those broken out.
I think that's probably one of the better uses of this report. The other one shows your total, but this one does give you the breakdown on the account. So it's easier to pull out your transactions that maybe shouldn't be included in your amount via this report.
Right. Erin?
Awesome. So once you've gone through your reports, you've pulled out all of your vendors that you think are going to be needing to receive a 1099. You're going to send them all W-9s. Now, what the heck is a W-9? We'll talk about it. The W-9 is the request for the taxpayer identification number. This can either be their social security number or the business's EIN, depending upon how they have, made themselves a business. If it's a sole proprietorship, it's very possible that it could just be their social security number. The best way to get these filled out, in my opinion, is to provide the form to the vendor directly. The IRS has made this PDF, this fillable form online. You can easily Google W-9 form and it'll pop up in one of the first search results. If you send them one like this, where they can fill in the information and send it right back to you, kind of removes some of that barrier to having them get it completed, because that is probably the most painful area of the whole 1099 process, is just getting them to fill out the W-9 form. One thing to note with lawyers, they will usually provide their EIN on their invoices because they know that they have to receive a 1099. So just a little, if you're looking for lawyers, check their invoices first, because it often has the EIN right on there. It's really nice. I wish more people did that, but they don't. So providing a fillable PDF form is great. You can also invite the contractor to fill out their W-9 information inside QBO. I've had, you know, I'd say less than 50% luck with that, because they often see like this QuickBooks invite and think that it's asking them to create an account and do all this stuff. And it's like, no, I really just want your EIN. So I don't have a ton of luck with that. I have better luck with the fillable PDF form. You can also use document signature apps like DocuSign or PandaDoc if you use that in your business. You can make the fields fillable or have it recognize the fields that are already there. Pretty nice if you have that capability, because then it allows them to securely sign the document as well. But not everyone has those tools. Last resort definitely is the USPS mail. I suppose you could FedEx an envelope or UPS an envelope as well. Probably not very, probably very expensive, let's say that. But that is your last resort. When you are filing 1099s, we'll talk about any penalties a little bit later, but you do have to show that you made a good faith effort to retrieve the information so that you could accurately file a 1099. Either the email itself of you sending the PDF form, or if you mail out a physical form to then be returned to you, that's your good faith effort. And if you were ever audited or anything like that, the IRS is going to want to see that you made that effort. So talking about the the W-9 itself, it asks for the name that shows up on the tax return, any doing business as name that's related. So you could have your name that is on the first line, and then you're doing business as name. Then the vendor is going to indicate what kind of entity they are. Your C Corp, your S Corp don't need 1099s. So if you get one of these back and either of those boxes are selected, you can uncheck that vendor from needing a 1099. Pretty much all the rest of them do need one. Any LLCs, anything like that, you'll notice that the LLC option has a couple other tax designations, because an LLC can elect to be taxed as corporation, partnership, or S corporation. Again, if they put C or S, then they're technically taxed as a corp, and the 1099 is not necessary. Then they'll fill out their address. Any account numbers is kind of a not really necessary. I've never seen it used. And then their social security number or EIN. Ideally, you'd get a signature, ideally secure signature. It's not always possible. That's kind of the nitty gritty of the W-9. If you have people that maybe are new or like a handyman coming to work on your property or do some repairs, they may balk at filling out the W-9. They don't necessarily want to give you that information so that you can issue it. But again, as long as you make that good faith effort to get the information, you are you've made that good faith effort. Once you get the completed W-9 back, there's a couple different things you can do with it. We recommend attaching it to the vendor record within the general ledger system. So QuickBooks Online has a notes area and an attachment area within the vendor record. That's where we put all of ours. It makes it super easy for future years so that it's always there attached to the vendor. You can also want to update the vendor record with the EIN. You have to do more than just attach it. You want to fill it in QuickBooks Online. There's a little box to check to make sure that they are selected as a vendor that will get a 1099. So you're going to make sure all the fields are ready to go. Make sure the address is updated so that the 1099 gets where it needs to go. If you fill out a 1099 and you don't get the EIN or the social security number and you end up filing it with blanks, you will get an email, or not an email, you'll get a letter from the IRS basically saying, hey, you filed this 1099, it was incomplete. Please verify your records going forward. There's technically a penalty for filing incomplete 1099s, but I have never seen it. I don't think Sarah's ever seen one. It's almost like the IRS is just happy that you submitted a 1099. They aren't going to penalize you for doing it wrong. But technically they could charge you a penalty for filing it incorrectly. But again, you made the good faith effort, kind of covering all your bases there. So once you get the 1099 back, I'm going to throw it back over to Sarah to talk about reviewing your information.
So we're going to review the information, and this is where we're also going to talk about the review of the QBO 1099 wizard. So once you have confirmed all the information, entered that into your GL system, and you're ready to file your 1099s, we recommend that you use the 1099 wizard within QBO. They do have the option to submit those forms for you. It's not necessary, and you can do the setup of the wizard and get the reporting from the wizard without having to go through the process of actually using them to file the returns or file the 1099s. So it's really helpful in verifying your vendor selections and your account mappings and making sure that you're selecting all of the information that you should be for these 1099s. So it's definitely helpful to use this. Erin, can you, thank you. So to navigate to the 1099 wizard, you're going to go to the vendor center in QBO, and on the upper right hand side, there's a little button that says prepare 1099s. Once you hit that, it tells you, let's get started. The first page is just verifying your company info. So as long as you've set up your QBO file to contain your company's legal name, legal address, and EIN, that should be all set, but it doesn't hurt to double check it. And then you're going to, on the next screen, you're going to select the non-employees drop down, and you'll select all of the applicable accounts that you've gone through from your P&L. So your repairs and maintenance, your professional fees, your commissions and things like that, you'll want to make sure to check those, as well as the leasehold improvement accounts on the balance sheet. And then under there's a second section that is for the 1099 miscellaneous, which is where you can select your rent. Typically the wizard will automatically do that one for you. It recognizes that account, which is kind of nice. From there, on the next screen, you'll be able to view a report of the vendors that you have deemed 1099able, and any amounts that are in those accounts that you've just mapped. If you look through a list and you're like, oh, Joe's snowplow isn't listed and it should be, why is that? There's a little section where you can click add from the vendor list. So then you can go and check off Joe Snow plowing, and that'll come right over into your report. So it's going to be really helpful to make sure you're not missing any information, to help you verify the totals and the payments that you've sent out to your vendors. And at this point, once you've verified all of that, you can choose to handwrite your 1099s. There is special 1099 paper that you can buy from pretty much any paper supply store. So Staples, things like that. I think you can get them online relatively cheap also.
Costco.
What?
Costco sells them quite cheap online.
Yeah. You can do it through QBO also. There is a charge through QBO. Obviously, it's more expensive to do it through QBO than if you were to purchase the paper and manually do it. Or there's a plethora of different apps that you can go through to file these. The next slide, please. So 1099s, when are they due? When do we have to send these out before the government slaps our wrist? So for, or what's required for the federal, sorry, is if they're handwritten, you do need to send the 1099s with a 1096. So the 1096 tallies up all of the 1099s that you're sending to the IRS. This is not required if you do electronic filing. So if you file with QBO or any of the other apps out there, there is no 1096 required. It's just the 1099s. And the IRS also has a FIRE website where you can submit things through. So there's definitely a lot of choices. The due dates. So federal and state, they're due January 31st for the NECs. The 1099 miscellaneous are due March 1st if you're paper filing, and then March 31st if you're doing the electronic filing. I imagine that's because they know how fast USPS mail is. I don't know why there's the huge gap in time, but that's my assumption. Most states have the same deadlines as these federal deadlines, but I can't guarantee every state is that way. Massachusetts does have the same deadlines as the federal, but New York and Vermont don't require 1099s unless you have withheld state income tax from those folks. If you're sending 1099s out, you have a copy that goes everywhere. Like it's going to print. It's going to be on the form that you're filling out. So it doesn't hurt to send it. They probably would just shred it. But at least you did your due diligence. The recipient copies, so your copy B and your copy 2. So like I just said, when you are printing and filling these forms out, there's multiple sections that you have to fill out. So the copy B and the copy 2 is going to go to the recipient. So that's your vendor. They need to be sent to your vendors by January 31st. I suggest getting them out sooner rather than later so that if there are any discrepancies or if your vendors are a little bit taken aback by the amount that you've put on there, you have a little bit of time to do adjustments before the final deadline of January 31st. So what we try to do is by week 3 in January, have the majority out to recipients so that we can make sure everything has been reviewed and is accurate on the vendor side. And it gives them a little bit of time to communicate back to us. Erin is going to tell us how to get ready for 23.
Yay. So as you can see, the 1099 process is a lot of back and forth with your vendors. It's not the most fun thing to be doing right after the holidays when you've just had some time off, maybe, or maybe you're super busy because it is the holidays and no one wants to cook. So you can definitely set yourself up for success going forward, so it's not as painful. I like to do this whenever there's a new vendor coming on or anything, is I like to ask them for a completed W-9 and certificate of liability insurance before I ever issue payment. And that's like a requirement. Like before I pay you, I need these documents. I know we didn't really talk about the certificate of liability insurance, but if you've ever experienced a workers' comp audit, this is something that they will usually ask for contractors and all of that. So it's really good just to get it at the very beginning of the relationship when you're asking for the W-9. That way you've covered all of your bases. If you do experience a workers' comp audit or a UI audit, like then you've covered everything. You know you're good. You aren't going to get penalized for, having to get a certificate of liability insurance later. I know I'm located in Montana, and it's like the auditors immediately hone in on any kind of payment issued to a sole proprietor or single member LLC, they're like, where's that certificate of liability insurance? So I know it's not like 1099 specific, but really good practice to get when you're getting the W-9. And if you hold back payment until you get that documentation, they're more willing to give it to you because they want to get paid. Definitely what I would recommend. And if you're doing that throughout the whole year and updating your vendor records through the whole year, then completing your 1099s is just a few clicks through the 1099 wizard in QBO, or a couple reports to pull to verify it's all there, and you're done. Definitely makes the time shrink from filing it all in January to throughout the rest of the year. Just makes it really nice. I don't know if I've ever received, like, I don't know if I've ever had a vendor refuse to like perform the work or anything because we required a W-9. Sarah, have you ever had that?
I have not, fortunately, but also there has been vendors in the past where, like, if you hadn't collected it prior to giving the payment, there's a very slim chance of getting the W-9 afterwards. So typically once they've submitted an invoice and you request the W-9 before you send them the payment, you should be in pretty good shape.
And I do think that is becoming more common of a practice. So vendors are getting a little less hesitant to fill it out. I feel like it's becoming more commonplace. So everyone's like, fine, I'll do it. But there is definitely still, I would say, your sole proprietors who tend to be a little bit more wishy-washy in getting the information. So just keep that in mind. If you can get the W-9 and the cert before you pay them, then you should be good. I know that we're basically at the end of our slide deck. We are very fast compared to Chris. So we do have some takeaways, and then I have some like other commonly asked questions that we'll go over. But if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will definitely answer them. But first, our takeaways for today: what are 1099s and how are they reported? Hopefully you have a little bit more information on that. How to gather your information, your filing due dates and deadlines, because it is filed to both the recipient and the IRS. So it's not just one filing to the IRS or the state. And then always, if you're overwhelmed, get help. We're here to help you. We can, whether it's communicating with vendors or just managing the 1099s altogether, we are here. So question and answer. We do have one question, but I think the most common question that I get when it comes to 1099s is, can an employee receive a W-2 and a 1099? Most common question. Personally, this can be seen as a red flag by the IRS because any income that the employee is usually getting as part of the employment arrangement should be subject to employment taxes. However, there are instances where a person can be issued a 1099 and receive a W-2. And that is usually when the employee has a bona fide side business where they do like landscaping maybe on the side, and they actually have other clients that they're invoicing. Like, it's a true side business. There's nothing about the arrangement that affects the employment status of that employee. The fact that they are invoicing other clients, they have revenue from other places, is I would say the verifier. It's like, okay, I can verify that this is a bona fide business. They can get a 1099 for this work. You still may be questioned about it, but if that person can provide, the documentation to show that they are a business, that's pretty, that should work. But in most cases, an employee should not receive a 1099 and a W-2. Sarah, did you want to add anything onto that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. There's, occasional times when they'll receive both, but more often than not, they should only be getting the W-2, and all compensation should be going through payroll.
Yeah. I think another common one is cleaning, where they might want to 1099 the person for cleaning. And again, you have to ask, is that person cleaning other places and getting paid for it? Or are they only cleaning the office or whatever it is? If they're only cleaning the office, they don't have any other clients, most likely employment income. You can separate it on their wage statement as this is for cleaning, but if they aren't cleaning anything else or having their own liability insurance and all of that, then it's red flag right there. But very common one, the cleaning one. We do have a question about vendors who don't carry insurance and can't produce a certificate of insurance. Definitely have seen that. It is not great if you are audited during that period by workers' comp or UI. Usually you end up having to pay premiums on whatever you paid them. It also is a huge risk for you as the business owner. If you have a vendor coming in and they hurt themselves and they don't have that certificate of insurance, they're going to be, or you're going to be liable for, any injuries or anything like that has happened because they didn't have their own insurance and you didn't verify that. I know in the state of Montana, there is a exemption, like an independent contractor exemption certificate that basically exempts the sole proprietor or single member LLC from needing to carry insurance. Basically them saying, hey, I'm a business person, I'm not going to carry insurance, but I'm acknowledging that if anything happens to me, it's on me, it's not on the business owner. So we also can ask for that. So if they don't have the liability insurance, make sure they have the exemption certificate if the state you're in has one of those. Sarah, anything to add on to that?
No, I think you answered it pretty well.
Awesome. Do you know if the states in the Northeast have that exemption certificate?
I can't recall if they do. I know that we've always had to provide the certificate of insurance, and if it wasn't provided, then the business pays the premium on their policy. Yeah, you might check. I might look into that, see which states do have them. I believe Idaho, Montana for sure, Idaho. I don't know if Washington does. Anyway, it's some states do, some states don't. So might be something that is beneficial. Usually it's very cheap. It's like $150 here. So if someone doesn't want to get an insurance policy, they could pay $150 for this certificate. Usually lasts for a couple of years and they have to renew it. Which if you do get one of those, make sure you check the expiration date. Same thing on the certificate of insurance. Check your expiration date to make sure that that is still valid. I can't think of any other 1099 questions that I normally get. If you are going to paper file, I would order your paper soon or go to Staples or Office Depot or whatever you use to get them, because by the end of January, most places are sold out. If you plan to handwrite or print those, and they're special paper, it's red ink that has to be sent to the IRS. So I don't think the suppliers buy too much with how much e-filing has been going on, but if you need to paper file, order that paper fast. Yes, Chris.
I have a question.
Yes.
Should we be paying our catering employees via 1099, or should we be issuing our catering staff 1099s if they only work once or twice a year?
No, they should be on payroll.
They should be on payroll.
Even if they only work once or twice a year for you, they should be a part of payroll. It's part of your normal business activity. There isn't really a way to try to get around saying that they're not part of your business activity, or to say they're not an employee.
Yeah, tagging on to that, the IRS does have a handy little chart that will help you determine if an employee or if an individual is an employee versus an independent contractor. A lot of that has to do with control of the employee, or IC. If you are telling them where to be, where to go, you're directing them. They don't have any they can't just do everything on their own time. Typically, it's an employer relationship. So if you're asking the question if they're an employer or an independent contractor, the vast majority of the time they're an employee, not a contractor. So definitely on payroll. Any other questions? Perfect. Well, we're going to go ahead and end it today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at hello@prefix.accountants. And enjoy our beautiful website, prefix.accountants. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Chris is on Twitter. So if you want to go nag him a little bit about 1099s, I'm sure that he would absolutely love it.
Yes.
I check my DMs once per quarter.
What was that?
I check my DMs once per quarter, so it'll be might be a minute.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.